Hello, Mallards. It is Friday. I think that today's video is going to be a short one. Why? Because it's almost 2 in the morning and I don't necessarily have anything to talk about. I spent a large part of my day today at Tires Plus waiting for them to be able to check over my car because it was much busier than anticipated. And I read a lot of 2 different books I've been reading, which was fun. I read an entire Marvel fanfic that I shouldn't have read because I should have been reading the books that I am in the middle of reading, but sometimes fanfic calls my name and I listen. And today was one of those times, and I don't regret that at all. But it does mean that a lot of my day was in this like weird limbo stage while I was waiting for Tires Plus to be done figuring out what they thought was wrong with my car so that I could then call my father and discuss with him how most of the stuff didn't make sense to me and see if he also felt the same way I did or could explain things to me. And basically what it boils down to is that I spent a little over $100 getting repairs done that I felt were necessary. And they wanted to charge me a little over $3,000 to do a bunch of stuff that I'm not sure makes sense. And people talk about this a lot, about how a tire care place will, or a mechanic in general, will take like advantage of a woman. But I don't even necessarily think that it's that I'm female. I think that we live in a capitalistic society and that everybody is driven by the upsell, and the upsell in a mechanic's job happens to be, hey, fix these things. These need repaired. As opposed to being like, the upsell is like, wow, you know what would go really well with that set of pants you just bought? This shirt. Or, you know, you look really, really good in that shirt. I think you should get it in a different color. Or we have a lipstick that perfectly complements that eyeshadow. Like, this sort of upselling happens constantly. I just feel like it's different when they're like, yeah. So we know you came in here because there's a slow leak in your tire, but also all of these things could get fixed too. They're wrong and need to get fixed. And I feel like what makes it the upselling so different in something like a mechanic shop versus like when you're at a retail location is the idea that they're implying that something is wrong. And it's just unique specifically to the like car repair industry, because I do feel like if I bring a plumber in to fix a leak in my pipe, he's not like, yes. And I also noticed that your toilet looks like it might start leaking, and so you should check that out. Or like, while I was repairing the leak in your sink, I also noticed that your faucet's a little old and we should replace that. Like, those sort of service people don't tend to do that kind of upsell because that's not the point of their industry. Like, the point of their industry is the service. And so what they might sell you on is they came to repair your air conditioner and they suggest that you also get your ducts cleaned because cleaning them is important, and they noticed some debris. And so there's a little bit of that, but it's never as like dire as everybody makes it seem in a mechanic shop. Like, I've never had somebody who's coming to do a repair on my house tell me that something else was very dire and it should get fixed. But I have that frequently in a mechanic shop. And I also find it interesting because I feel like the stress level is different when somebody's like, oh, there's something wrong with your car. And I think that's why it's effective, because people get nervous and upset and worried, and people don't understand how their cars work. I'm one of those people. Like, I don't necessarily understand how my car works. I feel like my car is so much more of a mystery to me than anything else in my life. Like, even my laptop or my phone is less of a mystery than my car, for me personally. And nothing in my house is as much of a mystery to me as my car. So if somebody comes into my house and they say, oh, I think that you need this fixed too, I feel confident in my ability to gauge whether or not that's true. And I don't feel as confident with my car, I feel more confident now. Thank you to Raymond for that. He's taught me a lot, and like I feel more confident in myself now, but I didn't used to feel very confident. And it's definitely been a learned skill. And I feel like a lot of people are not terribly confident in their car. And so this, I am sure, works really well for them. I'm sure there were people who would walk in to get their tire patched and would leave paying $3,500 for all of these other repairs, most of which I'm guessing I don't need. Like, I'm curious to take this to another place and see if they give me a completely different rundown of the things that need fixed. Like, it is interesting to see how that changes from place to place and whether or not people share the same opinion. And I think for me, when this happens at a mechanic shop, it strikes me in a similar way to going to the doctor for something and then them telling you you need all of this other treatment, which I think probably does happen at the doctor sometimes. Like sometimes you go in for a regular checkup and they discover you have cancer. Like that sort of thing happens. But like a doctor isn't usually trying to upsell you on fixing a bunch of other stuff. A plastic surgeon might. But a doctor is providing a service. So if you go in for a broken arm, they're not going to try to also convince you to fix all of this other stuff at the same time. They're going to just fix your arm. Like when I went in to get stitches, they weren't like, oh, and have you also considered your cholesterol levels, and perhaps we could get you to talk to somebody about that? Or like, have you also thought about your eyesight and things you could fix with that? Like, that's not what happened. They gave me the stitches in my finger. And I feel like the level people feel that they are at when they're taking their car into a mechanic is the same level of, I broke my arm, so I need my arm fixed. And instead of just getting their arm fixed like you would at a doctor, it's like going to the doctor to get your arm fixed, and they tell you that they also want to put a cast on your fingers and that they maybe want to align your spine and that they are considering that you should maybe get your kidney removed because it could cause problems. You know, it looks a little fishy. And I find that a little frustrating. Not that I don't understand it from an economic point of view, but I do find it interesting that that's the way this industry has sort of leaned. And I would be curious to know from the perspective of somebody who is running that company, does this need to happen because the company cannot sustain itself because the company cannot sustain itself by actually doing the things that need done? Like, is there not enough revenue generation in the actual problems for them to pay out and keep the business running, and so this upselling is necessary? Or it just is a this has always worked so we continue to do it situation? I don't know. A lot of people talk about it being something you do to like pull the wool over somebody's eyes, and I think that that's maybe the most malicious way to think about it, because I, having experienced this several times in my life, don't necessarily consider it a malicious intent on behalf of the mechanic who's looking at my car. I don't feel like he's maliciously trying to upsell me, even though he will get a little bit more, but like the labor costs, not that high. I think there's probably a quota in place for the amount of things that they have to do. And so if they can convince me to do things, then they get closer to meeting their quota, even if I don't need those things done. And this is why quotas are kind of a terrible way to gauge performance. And it's unfortunate that we have a society that's driven by quotas, because Everybody wants a measurable way to gauge performance, and quotas seem the most obvious. And it's a lot easier to track the number of things you sell than it is to track the satisfaction of your customers, who may or may not actually fill things out or respond the way that you want them to. So I would rather instead make sure that you've sold the number of tires that you need to sell for the month. And I don't know necessarily what could be done to fix that, but I feel like there's got to be a better way to measure job performance that doesn't result in you trying to push things on a customer that they don't need. If I had the superpowers of Scarlet Witch, maybe I would just erase capitalism. I don't know how I'd go about doing that. I also don't know how it would work for the world. Like, might be a bad choice. But in this universe, I'm Scarlet Witch, and she just makes a series of really bad choices with her completely reality rewriting powers. And very rarely does it work out well, but she keeps doing it. So, like, if I'm Scarlet Witch, then I get a chance. So I'm going to erase capitalism. At one point, she erases mutants. She just gets rid of everybody with mutant powers. So I'm just going to get rid of capitalism. Completely rewrite reality so capitalism never happens. It's impossible to fathom what a world like that would be like, but it's a fun thought experiment. Anyway, so that was my day today. I spent a lot of time at Tires Plus, and I deeply considered the dangers of quotas and the problems with a society that considers upselling to be incredibly important, and the downfalls of capitalism as an economic model. I don't know what else you expected me to do during that time, but here we are. And now I have definitely talked long enough on this video, so I'm going to go to bed. I'll see you tomorrow.